employment. So just purposes of record, Allison, can you call roll so that everybody knows that we are present?
Lyman?
Yes.
Phelps?
Yes.
Rodriguez? Here. Turkey?
Sharpie.
Unmute. You have to unmute, right?
Sorry, we're calling roll. She called your name.
Our audience says they can't hear any of us.
And the people in the audience online here now, I'm talking, I think we have people that weren't unmuting their computer and talking. Yeah. Get everybody's roll call.
Did Turkey ever? Yeah, okay. Walters?
Walters?
And Lyman?
Here.
Okay. So now do I have a motion? Do I have a motion to consider approval of the return to learn plan?
So moved.
Second.
So moved.
And then Member Rodriguez seconded that. So now I will have Dr. Asplund and his team present their plan for returning to school.
Thank you. So I will start by speaking. Everybody online is still hear me yet? All right, there we go. Thank you, everybody. That was quick. Normally I would get up at a podium, but I think for everybody's sake tonight, I'm just going to sit here and just understand. I'm going to give a brief overview. I'm going to give the general recommendation. We're going to have Mrs. Springer get up and give the highlights of the learning plan. We're going to have Mrs. Ritchie get up and give the highlights of the social emotional learning plan. And Mr. Davis get up and give the highlights to the food service. So I will not be speaking to those immediately, but I do want to thank literally hundreds of people who have helped with this. And if you count all the people that did the polling, we're into the thousands. So starting in June, we started polling our families. We started seeking feedback. We had polls that went out to the staff. We had polls that went out to the parents. We sought feedback from students, staff, and parents. We had 3 different focus groups that met in June. We received those reports. We then met in 6 different committees last week to go over the finer points of all of the possibilities. And we considered all sorts of different factors. And I think it's very important for people to understand how we arrived at the recommendation we're going to be making. So first of all, we have to start with safety. So we started with the safety of our students, the safety of our staff, and then that extends into the safety of our community. We then looked at, obviously, the learning needs and how we could do that in the most safe way possible. And we tried to do it in a way that it wasn't a one-size-fits-all. We tried to hit the committee's recommendations to the best we could. And the committees were comprised of community members and staff members, administration, board. And we split the committees up into elementary, secondary, special education, social emotional learning, and operations and technology. And so each of those committees was tasked with giving us a recommendation for how they would desire to move forward, in addition to a narrative of how they believe we should go forward. So the plan we put forward tonight is really a compilation of all of those inputs. And I'd especially like to thank the GEA for their cooperation. We've met 2 different times to go over the finer points of the work rules, and I believe we're at essentially an agreement. with 19. What we are proposing is the following, and I'm going to read from this document to make sure that I get everything right. So we're starting with why. While we recognize the critical need for our students to return to learning in the fall, our greatest priority is the health and safety of our students and staff. In addition, we value consistency for all stakeholders. Therefore, the e-learning platforms of Seesaw, Google Classrooms, and in some narrow cases, Moodle, will remain the bedrock of our instructional delivery model for the entire 2020-2021 school year, regardless of in-person status or student. So what does that mean? For these reasons, we've determined that for the first 5 weeks of school, a fully virtual e-learning format for our return to learn is the best course of action at this time. The district will evaluate the status of our learning format and make changes in a timely manner as circumstances change. After the first 5 weeks, as facts and conditions regarding COVID-19 evolve, as measured by IDPH county-level COVID-19 risk metrics, we will modify the number of students on site and frequency of attendance. So how? We've outlined the plan on the succeeding pages that I would have attached if I were going to read it all, but we won't. I'll have to leave that to the next three people. We've also outlined the roles and responsibilities of all stakeholders within the guidance. Recognizing the need to plan for this fundamental shift and change in the instructional delivery model, we've added additional planning days at the start of our school year as allowed by the Illinois State Board of Education. These days will provide teachers with additional time to ensure the planning of quality instruction, assessment, and student support for the 2020-2021 school year. So, for families, assuming this gets approved, okay, first of all, and nothing's been approved yet, the recommendation is this. July 27th, which is Monday, we would begin registration of students. On August 3rd through August 20th, we will be providing teacher e-learning training on site or remote as needed, preferably on site with social distancing. August 21st, registration will end. So July 27th, August 21st is our registration period. On August 28th, we would still have our originally scheduled Teachers Institute, but then on August 31 through September 4th, rather than student instruction, those would be our 5 e-learning planning days. So September 7th is Labor Day, so beginning on September 8th, this plan would propose that we would begin our e-learning and instructional year on that date. October 9th, we would reevaluate the date based on IDPH county level data. And on October 12th, which is our regular board meeting in the month of October, we would approve a future plan. So that is the general overview. Are there any questions about the general overview before I turn it over to Mrs. Springer?
Can I just make one note on the registration?
Absolutely.
At the last board meeting, the regular meeting of this month, we did vote on registration fees for this year. With the exception of driver's education, the only applicable fee, well, there aren't any other applicable
Other than
fees.
parking.
High school. So people that in the past have had to delay registration, make sure they had the funds to pay the registration fees, there are no registration fees. You know, that's an action that was taken outside of this, but it will help this activity quite a bit.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification, Member Lyon. So back before we knew that coronavirus was going to change our lives forever, this board did approve elimination of all registration fees. So it's a happy coincidence that we can now report that people do not have a barrier to registration. They can simply log on. It will take approximately 5 minutes. And you can register your child. There are no fees to do so.
Good evening.
Hold on, he asked if there will be in-person registration, if it's all online.
It is all online. If somebody would need to have assistance, they can call the office and make an appointment, but we would prefer that it all be online.
All right, good evening. I am going to highlight,
Repeat that number, Sharpie.
First day of student attendance would be September 8th, the day after Labor Day.
Correct. First day of student online learning would be Tuesday, September 8th. Under this proposal.
Are there any other additional questions from either Member Sharpie or Member Lyon or Member Walters who are on Zoom before Mrs. Springer begins a portion of her presentation. Okay, thank you. Mrs. Springer.
Third time's a charm. I'm going to highlight the key components of our plan. You have the full plan in front of you, but I also think it's important to distinguish.
Are you okay?
I don't have any bias.
Somebody just needs to unmute over there so they can hear her.
Oh,
I can't hear you through this.
Here, you can come to my computer.
Okay.
Sorry.
Like that.
Can't hear through this.
It's up to you.
Okay, very good.
Turn my microphone on, so I know.
yes.
Yeah, okay.
Very good. So the distinction I'm going to make is between what quarter four looked like in remote learning versus what we're doing now. So I want to make sure that the public is very aware that this is a different form of instruction than what was experienced in quarter four. So the construct of the school day would look like 5 hours of instruction. So it does not indicate that we would have 5 hours of online face-to-face instruction on a computer, but that the sum of the day's instructional activities would equate to 5 hours. Attendance will be taken by 11 a.m. each day, which is different than in the spring when attendance was not required. And we will have that attendance taken on a learning platform. The details of that specific process are not yet outlined, but we will have that as a key factor. Teachers will both provide synchronous and asynchronous instruction. And now that we have greater access to resources, we can provide enhanced instruction in an e-learning platform and framework.
Can you explain those two terms?
Yes, I apologize. Synchronous would be live. So I would be, right now we're having a synchronous meeting. I've seen people here face to face, we're interacting. Asynchronous would be activities that you might do on your own. I might have videotaped my lesson, and then you can pull that up when it's available for you, or the time is appropriate for you, and you can complete that instruction at that time. So that's the difference.
I have a question
Yes.
on attendance. How are we gonna get to the children that are engaging on the online? I'm unmuted. How are we going to get to the children that aren't engaging so that we can have attendance?
I will have Ms. Ritchie speak about that piece as it relates to SEL when she talks, because I think that's a very important point to note. She'll clarify that, I think, in her portion of the presentation, if that's acceptable. Okay. In addition, we have over 220 teachers signed up for the training in August. This training will allow teachers an opportunity to learn how to plan on the e-learning platform, engage students in learning through this mode of instruction, create and assign activities, and demonstrate student understanding, and provide opportunities for assessment to take place so as to drive our instruction. In addition to these training opportunities and the ones proposed for the first week of September pending board approval of the calendar, teachers will be able to better understand how to use these tools and platforms and integrate them more authentically in the instruction and any future opportunity for when students return to school. So these could be used in both the e-learning format and when we return face-to-face. Teachers will develop weekly plans for their instruction to give a tentative outline to parents at the beginning of the week, so parents are aware of the assignments, activities, and assessments that are taking place over the course of the week. In addition, we are hosting a teacher night for each school in the first week of September to allow the teachers the opportunity to meet with families. That was something that came out of several of our meetings with parents and teachers alike, wanting to make sure that there was that face-to-face connection at some point, but in a safe, masking, social distancing format. So we planned that as well. During this time, teachers can provide syllabi, we can get Chromebooks distributed, we can do a number of things that we promote a successful school year of learning for students and staff. Content and instruction is key, specifically to my role in the district. The content and instruction will be aligned to the new Illinois Learning Standards and our District 205 Essential Skill Maps. We will be using, as Dr. Asplund said earlier, Seesaw at the lower grades in pre-K through 2, and then we will also use Google Classroom in grades 3 through 12 and Google for current existing users of that platform. Some of the programs that we purchased are Screencastify, Pear Deck, Seesaw, Edgenuity, IPEVO document cameras, Microsoft wireless adapters, and more. I'm also looking into online resources for books for students to have. Obviously, we don't want to necessarily give them print copies of books, but we want students to be reading literature. And we also want teachers to be able to have novel units. But how do you do that when you can't distribute 30 to 90 novels to your class? So I have been in contact with several vendors. I've also enlisted the help of Ms. Danielle Eppy, our high school librarian, to research that a little bit more. What I'd really like to see is some of our 9-12 teachers be able to select some novels that they would use, so those would be the first one or
Why can't we use real novels?
the cleaning of that and taking that home presents a challenge with health guidelines and be able to clean those materials and then return them back to the school in an appropriate manner.
Isn't it a time issue?
Tell me more.
Well, I should. Well, in terms of books, let's say if it's a book that we have in the school and it's been sitting there since March, the time of having it sit dormant has already been passed. So that would be available to send out to students.
If I'm going to issue, which I think I understand your point, but my concern more or less is that if I am, let's say, Mr. Brian Benowitz, and I'm teaching a class and I want to give a novel of Mice and Men, if I'm going to distribute that, one, I have to make sure I have enough copies, obviously, but two, how do I get those to the students? How do I get those back without transfer of any kind of material, and the concerns that we have with just having people interact with those printed materials at this time? Hopefully that answered your question.
Well, it's an answer.
It's not the one I would like as a former English teacher either. I mean, I would rather have the book again, but this would give us the opportunity to have students interact with text. They could actually highlight with this piece as well. And some of the books are even able to be read aloud so they can hear someone actually speaking through this, which helps with some of our students with disabilities as well.
Just a second, Ms. Spring, remember Walters has a question.
Yes.
Member Walters?
Oh, we are certainly using iReady Math. I just didn't include that in the additional tech tools. But yes, that will be one of the platforms that is used kindergarten through 8th grade. Absolutely. We will focus on the acceleration of instruction as we begin the 2020-2021 school year. In that realm, some of the research that came out of Hurricane Katrina and that lapsed time between the hurricane and when they restarted school was that the schools and the districts that focused most on the acceleration of learning versus the constant remediation actually show greater gains over time. So what that looks like is that we would have perhaps 9th grade English, okay, and I'm going to teach you about alliteration, or I can teach you about some kind of a writing component within there, within that frame or that unit. But what I would want to do is to make sure, in order to have access to that content, you have those prerequisite skills from 8th grade that you might have missed in quarter 4 of your 8th grade year as you're coming into 9th grade. Does that make sense? Otherwise, we're constantly backfilling and never making up ground. In this fashion, I can spend maybe 1 lesson or 2 lessons, depending on what the data shows me about student understanding in my classroom, to then drive the instruction and then provide supports for students who are still struggling. Okay? Absolutely.
No, I never will do that impression of it. Just speaking of it.
In the Return to Learn plan, expectations are outlined for each stakeholder, which was a key piece of feedback that we received from all stakeholders. I want to know what my expectations are. As a student, I need to know what the teacher expects of me in the classroom. As a parent, I want to know what to expect of my student. I want to know what to expect of the teachers and the administrators, and so that is outlined. This is vastly different from last year, as there was little to no time in planning and training that was made available. We now have tools, extra supports, and guidance. Additional supports have been added to meet the needs of our students and families, including the expansion of internet access, technology tools and supports. I feel like I'm hearing myself with feedback. I apologize. Parent assistance is a key piece. You also, I think Member Sherby is the one that asked me about that last meeting. There will be a Meet Your Teacher night, like I spoke about, on September 2nd, September 3rd. We're offering that from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. both nights. Parent universities are going to take place on August 24th through August 27th. We'll start at 8 a.m. each day at each school site, and we will run those every 2 hours, 8, 10, 12, 2, 4, 6. So
What's happening?
we're going to teach them about utilizing Skyward, how to check your students' grades, how to access messages, how to use the platforms. If you're a person who's using Seesaw, I want to show you how to navigate Seesaw. Google Classroom is the same. We would utilize that, how to navigate the Google Suite. So if they're needing to create a Google Doc, they know how to help their student with some of those pieces. Or they also know how to access the information that's necessary.
Will this be archived so we can watch it later on? They listed the first 3
We're actually going to record those sessions so that it will be available, because even if you were there, you may actually want to go back to it and look again, right? And we're going to have some click-by-click instructions in paper that they can walk away with as well, because I think, until you've done it 5 or 6 or 10 times, it's not, won't happen, right? So, those will be able to. So this will be on August 24th to 27th. We'll start every hour, we'll go by 2 hours, so 8, 10, 12, 2, 4, and 6. I'll be sending out a Google, basically a Google form. It's a sign up so that we know how many people to expect. If we get a session that's too full, obviously we'll have to limit it to 50 participants. That includes the presenters. So we'll be doing that as we go.
At each school.
At each school for 4 days in a row. Yes. And obviously, I know some of these programs aren't necessarily, I saw a parent comment up there, that some of these programs aren't necessarily widely known. That's what we will explain at those presentations in the parent universities. Parenting's probably not something familiar for a parent or even like a Google Classroom, but those will be things we explain. And resources will provide. Let's say you can't come to one of those sessions, we'll have that on the parent page as well, on our website. Okay? Office hours with teachers are available each day for parents and students to connect with the teacher as needed. Provision of additional contact time with families of those who do not have work schedules that mirror the teacher's availability will be made available for those parents and teachers to connect. Each parent will only be asked to learn how to access these 2 platforms, and in the rare case of utilizing Google for some of those AP and dual credit courses. Let's see. So the platforms will be reduced, which follows the feedback from the surveys and all of our committee meetings to reduce that, so that we may have several different links to different activities that we're going to be doing, but you really only need to access a singular platform for your student. Especially, my heart goes out to parents who have multiple students at multiple grade levels, so we were trying to reduce that as well to make that more efficient and effective for parents. Access to the internet is a huge piece. It's something that's very much concerning to me for access and equity. Each student will be provided with a Chromebook. We'll also be replacing Chromebooks in need of upgrading so that students will be able to have efficient and dependable access to technology. This will take place on the Meet the Parent night. Mrs. Ham will be organizing this Chromebook distribution and swap if need be. We have 3 activity buses complete with external Wi-Fi access points that will be deployed throughout the community to provide access to internet. One example that I can think of right away was our initial thought would be to send one out to Holbrook Christian Church, park the bus there so that there would be access to those residents who live outside the city area and have difficulty having high-speed internet. In addition, we have external Wi-Fi access points on Silas Willard, Lombard, GHS, and then the board office to provide additional internet access. Mrs. Ham is working on a list of students in need of additional access to technology. This comes from an existing list from our spring survey of internet access. Lovely. Internet access.
This is what scares me in this. We can't run this, we're gonna have all the students.
Oh, students are very sad. Very sad.
This is a major problem.
We will be working though to address the needs of those students. We have existing survey data on students who are returning. We also recognize there will be new students to the district, so we will be mindful of that as well. But we will be making sure that we have hotspots for those students to perform their e-learning so that paper packets do not have to take place. We will have a technology hotline for students and families that are having difficulty with technical problems using the Chromebooks, use of technology platforms and glitches, along with needed maintenance and repairs that exist with using the technology.
What kind of hours?
Well, it'll have to be kind of a swing shift, and we talked about that. Mrs. Ham, Dr. Aspel, and myself talked about having throughout the school day, obviously for students who need to call in, but then also having some people kind of take a call in the evening so that we can make sure that we're accessible to those who need it.
We had a question online of the internet, so that what you just said would cover the north part of town.
I only gave one example of an activity bus. I didn't express all of them, sorry. I was just trying to give an example so people understood.
You said yours.
Not at present.
Yeah.
Yes, we have. Dr. Aspel has taken care of that. Any other questions for me? I didn't want to read the whole plan, I just want to highlight the pieces.
The only question I have is, how do you teach kindergarten online?
If you'd like to come on August 3rd, we can sure start showing you how. I'm excited about the training in August. Member Hennigan, that's a very good question. It's going to definitely be a different format for instruction. I'm really pleased with some of the tools we've purchased. Obviously, those are only tools to create the instruction, right, or to help engage students. But I think the key piece is that interaction between the teacher and the students. Seesaw at that young age allows students to actually manipulate. They can draw. They can actually take videos of themselves finding, like, you're looking for triangles, go find these triangles, tell me what colors they are, write your numbers, I mean, it's very interactive for them at the little ages of, the little grade levels of K1 and 2. Obviously, we want them to be moving and displaying their knowledge in multiple ways, and that platform actually provides that opportunity. Several of the teachers were able to pilot that free last year during Q4. Seesaw made that available for several teachers. I actually got a couple inquiries on, can we have this moving forward, because it was just so applicable to the 5, 6, and 7 year olds.
Will the preschoolers be provided with Chromebooks? So somebody asked.
I can answer that.
I know this is kind of brief, but we're also in a business meeting, and so if the member was in the audience, we wouldn't actually be taking questions, so I recognize that we want to be respectful of what we're seeing on the screen, but I also want to be able to acknowledge that we may not be able to answer everyone's question that comes up on the screen.
Yes, that is true. But the question was asked, are we going to have Chromebook? We are still in discussions with the Bright Future staff as to what the appropriate platform would be. There's a discussion that would be tablet, or that might be a more appropriate item for pre-K students. The desire for our most vulnerable pre-K students is to bring them in and to have individual instruction. So that needs to be stated as well. Our most vulnerable special education students, the plan would be to seek approval from the parents, obviously, but we would be bringing those students in on a regular basis for individual instruction as well. Plans for 2 students per classroom at a time on a regular schedule. So we would be arranging that through individual education plans, the IEPs. So speaking at the ground level, our life skills students would be the first one to be starting with life skills pre-K. And then as we move forward, the idea is to, if the virus allows us to do this, we would expand that as we move forward and add more students and more students. But right now we're starting with the small group and then taking the data from there and looking at what the virus is doing, how do we handle small groups of students, can we handle more, can we set up that schedule? So as we build this from a mobile platform setting, we can add students and subtract students in real time because everything went in from that technology. So I want to make sure I give Mrs. Ritchie ample opportunity to talk about social emotional learning, so I'll play talk.
Just for clarification, because I know that there's probably some people in Zinland who are calling me names in their brain for the comment that I just made. It's not to say that you can't ask your question in the chat, I just want you to recognize that we may not get to the answer, but because this Zoom call is being recorded, the transcripts of the chat are also recorded, so if there is a question that gets asked in the chat that we do not answer here on our line, in our meeting, the administration will be able to go back and look at those and respond to the folks that have asked the question, as long as their name is taken in with that question.
Presentations on the Zoom.
You can see it on the Zoom.
Share.
People on the stage. Still see it, doesn't it?
I see it.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Good evening, members of the board, those in the audience and those at home. Can you hear me, everyone? Wonderful. Can we hear me?
I don't know, we can't.
Okay, here.
Can members of the Zoom audience hear Mrs. Ritchie as she talks?
Unmute your mic.
No,
Huh?
It's not me that you're not muted.
I thought you were muted when I looked at you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I could hear you.
Wonderful. Thank you all. Dr. Asplund asked me to speak to you this evening regarding the district's plan for social and emotional learning for the next school year. You've all heard me talk about SEL, probably more for some of you than you'd like actually, but I haven't spoken to you about what meeting the needs of social and emotional learning for our students and frankly our staff, our entire school community, what that looks like when we're in a pandemic, which certainly changes many aspects. And really, to be frank, ramps up the amount of care and concern that we need to put into things like social and emotional learning, mental health resources and such. So I chose to use a virtual office to provide this information twofold. For one, it's a nice way to have all my links in one place. I'd like to share this presentation with anyone that would like to take more time and look at the documents and the information that is linked. Additionally,
this has kind of become a really popular way for students to get to know a teacher, a little bit about a teacher that they might not get to know in a virtual environment, because they can set up a Bitmoji environment in their classroom where they can put pictures of things that are important to them. You know, I have my cup of coffee because that's important to me. I even have Purell there, and I want to show you, if you click on, well, yeah, so like if I click on this, it's linked, and it'll take me to, stop the spread of germs. So I linked that there. This took me to create the virtual office. It took me 20 minutes, and I will tell you I'm not techie. So I intentionally tried this because it's an easy way to embed SEL at the classroom level, which is something that I'm going to talk to you a lot about today. So I'm not going to show you all the links. I'm going to, as I said, speak with you kind of briefly and give you an overview so that you can go in and look more in depth, anyone that would like to. So our district SEL program follows the CASEL framework, and CASEL also has, this is the collaborative for academic and social and emotional learning. They also have a framework for the return to school due to COVID. So we're following this research-based framework as well for this fall and beyond. So there are action items, and some critical pieces of this include, yes?
Hold on just a second.
Sure.
When we went to this screen for some reason, you mixed up.
Okay.
Angela too, it's all on my-
It's on mine. It's on six. Wait, what's on the corner? What's it?
Hold on, looking at.
Okay. Technology.
Yes.
Oh, I'm connecting.
So some of these critical,
Okay.
got it? Okay. Some of these critical pieces are things you've heard of before. So it's how are we linking up in the community? How are we getting feedback from our families? How do we do that in a virtual environment? How can we support our adults? And I'm going to start talking to you a little bit about that, but that's huge in this framework, is creating a supportive work environment for our teachers so that then they can appropriately provide the care for the students. If they're not dealing with their own struggles and concerns and anxiety related to everything that's going on, it's very difficult to then meet the needs of the students that are struggling with this. The final piece of this is using data to inform the moves forward. So those are the really important pieces that we'll be using. So I mentioned taking care of teachers. So one thing that we've worked on in our SEL steering committee is resources for teachers. And this is resources in terms of general support. So some of what we have on here is, what does it mean to be mindful, for example, with some apps, some vetted book suggestions. We have things about physical activity, social activities, but also information if we have a teacher in crisis. How to access mental health resources if needed, how to access a variety of resources in our community. So again, we really want to put that emphasis on taking care of our teachers who are frankly in the front line, assisting our students with being the very best that they can be. So that's just one example of that piece. Another part of this is finding a dedicated SEL curriculum for our district. We have members of the SEL steering committee right now that are putting a lot of time and energy into choosing a curriculum that works best for District 205. So we're again using research-based methodology to determine what best fits our students. So some of the ground rules that I gave them for their research, it had to have an equity component. It had to meet the needs of all learners. And I'm scrolling through this really quickly because I want to show you how the research is organized here. So they take programs that are used all around the country and then provides rating their outcomes in terms of how effective they were regarding in the classroom environment, for example, community environment. Student outcomes are related also to reduction in truancy, reduction in problem behaviors, those types of things. So that research is being done and is a huge part of this whole plan as well. Professional development. I've spoken with resources in the community. For example, the owner of Crossroads has committed to coming in and assisting our teachers with information that they may need to be successful with embedding SEL in the classroom. We did work with Jessica Donaldson from the ROE on trauma-informed classroom. She plans to come back and also provide information. We would like teachers to understand what SEL, having that embedded at the classroom level, what that looks like. And we want to provide the professional development and the support all the way along the way. And that will be also in the role of the building leaders, because it's on the building leaders to do the part of creating the supportive learning environment as a whole. And I won't, just for the sake of time, click on the SEL at the classroom level, but I've linked a doc that looks at some quick and easy research-based means of embedding SEL in the classroom level for teachers. I've also talked to you all about screening and mental health and the importance for our district. We will be piloting with the 9th grades, as I've told you before. For all grade levels, if we collect the information to learn about how our students are struggling, then we have the opportunity to ameliorate any difficulties prior to them having more significant issues in the school environment. So this entire approach is taking more of a proactive, as I spoke to you about last month's board meeting, taking a more proactive approach rather than a reactive approach when someone is really struggling. So how can we meet the needs of all of our learners, particularly if we're in a virtual environment? That's a huge, very important question. Member Phelps asked about this as well. What we're proposing is that our student support service personnel, our school counselors, for example, take that more proactive approach. They are reaching out to all students. So they're not reaching out to students like they did in the spring, where they spent a lot of time contacting the kids that maybe didn't log in, okay? Instead, they take a proactive approach to interact with all kids. But then we have a system in place when a student is not engaged. And what we would like to do is the first contact would be with that teacher. Because again, we want that SEL embedded at the classroom level. We want to work on those relationships between the teacher and the student, regardless of grade level. So the teacher would make the initial contact, and then if things are not rectified, if the contact does not initiate additional engagement, that's when the teacher would make a referral to the student support services, which would be deans, outreach, counselors. And we discussed today how to come up with a form so that the logistical considerations of getting small groups of students in when they need assistance, of getting the dean, for example, linked up with a student that is showing those first signs of lack of engagement, okay? And then if that doesn't work, if we still have an increased engagement, we have some other resources in order to take the support services to the student. So using social distance guidelines on a limited basis as needed, our outreach staff, deans, counselors perhaps, could go visit the home and attempt to provide support as well in that means. And then finally, another piece that I've talked to you about previously that I'm excited for us to be able to put in place is the wraparound approach. When things are still not working, the problem solving, just to get all of the players at the table or the virtual table to determine what it is that's going on. Perhaps there's food insecurity. I mean, that's a barrier that is keeping some of our students from being able to perform to expectation, frankly, at school. Really taking the time, if they are seeing someone in the community, perhaps they're linked up with the Child Advocacy Center. We would like to get a release of information for them to additionally be at the table and help meet that student's needs. So I talked to you about taking the services to the students. This is something we kind of came up with that fondly referred to as SEL on Wheels, where we could outfit the minibus with the snacks. We could outfit the minibus with the pamphlets regarding a variety of services that are available. Perhaps there would be people who would be interested in providing tutoring or academic support for someone struggling and does not have the transportation to get into school. We'd like to put that onto the minibus and take it to the students if that's what they need as well. So it's truly an approach that we don't want a single child to fall through the cracks. And frankly, I've said I've been here talking to you about SEL for quite a bit. This is a long time coming. The ISB standards for SEL have been in place for over 5 years. So this is an opportunity where we would truly be remiss if we did not put these things in place to meet the needs of all of our learners. Can I answer any questions for anyone?
I'm not sure if you remember, Walters, do you have any questions? I'm going to you first simply because the screen doesn't allow me to see you if you're raising your hand.
I'll share this with you all so you can click around. It's really fun, I promise. There's more cool stuff on there hiding, like if you touch that little plant. Or the Be Kind up there is the Science of Kindness. I don't know if anyone's familiar with the Science of Kindness, but there's a lot of really interesting information about the research on how being kind improves not only the world around you, but also improves your health and your overall satisfaction with life. Thank you.
Is this a Google Classroom that he's looking at?
This is a Google slide, just one Google slide. But a lot of teachers embed this into the Google Classroom, and you can also use your own virtual classroom and create a banner for your Google Classroom site.
Questions from other board members? Okay, Mr. Davis will be speaking to us about food distribution.
Okay, I will briefly summarize what the proposed plan may look like for food service. Obviously, it's going to, just like everything else, it's going to look a lot different with the proposal. How we see food service is basically everything being produced and packaged at GHS. GHS is moving to be the centralized kitchen anyway, so it completely makes sense to do that. Meals will be individually packaged and transported in insulated containers, so we plan on utilizing all the containers that we already have for our breakfast in the classroom program for mobilization of all the meals. We will coordinate and work with First Student to transport the meals. So First Student will be setting up buses at all, what we're proposing, what we're working on is all school locations, including here at Bright Futures, except for Gale, because we feel that GHS will take care of the population around that area. Also, we're looking at additional sites as well, but those are going to need to, there's going to be a little bit more coordination with those as far as approval and whatnot, but some of the more outlying areas of the community where we will have buses as well, and then also utilizing the 3 activity buses as well to hit the rural areas. Also, so how it will look is I'm suggesting that we do from 11:30 to 1 o'clock. I know that the buses are going to be out there longer than that. However, I believe we could possibly be running into a temperature control issue. So we will limit the time we will actually be offering meals, so we can make sure that we have those foods at a proper temperature. During pickup, what we would like to do is we would like to offer, we would like to provide 2 meals per pickup. So if a student or a family member comes and picks up the meal, they will be picking up the lunch for that day and then the breakfast for the next morning. So we will do just 1 pickup per day, but it will have 2 meals in it. We will also need to develop a plan to keep some sort of a roster check at the location. So basically, we're going to have to do our checks and balances and our due diligence as far as maintaining our records. None of that's really exciting, and that's not why we're here. We're here to figure out how we're going to feed the kids. But the record keeping also needs to be in place because we need to address allergies as well. So we have a system, obviously, through our Skyward system. In a normal environment, when the child comes through, there's a extra wanting message. Basically, when the cashier scans the child's card, it pops up. So it's kind of like a double check. So we will need to develop a plan to make sure that we are being safe as far as that as well. Let's see, what else? As far as if this continues longer, into the winter months, we will look at multiple day distribution. So if we're seeing that there's a big snowstorm or whatnot on Wednesday, we might do multiple meals on Tuesday in case we're not able to provide meals at that location due to a snowstorm or whatnot. And what else? As far as the district website, we will continue to link all the menus and nutritional values and everything like that, like we would in a normal environment. We will continue to, so you can still go on the district website and see what's planned for the menu for the whole week. And as far as we had also talked about having, a student or a family be, if your child went to Silas, you would have to go to Silas to be able to pick up that meal, and we're not going to do that. That's going to be, that's a tough situation, especially if you're a family with multiple kids in the district. We don't want people to have to go to 3 different places to pick up meals. We want to make this as easy as possible. So right now there are waivers from the state of Illinois and from the USDA that are allowing a little bit of flexibility to this program. But as of right now, the current waiver as it stands that was extended started in March. It basically acted like a summer feeding program. So you didn't have to basically have free, reduced, or paid kids. That waiver has not been extended yet. So we will figure out how we are going to determine that. That really only pertains to the high school currently, but we will have a plan in place for that.
Questions for Mr. Davis?
What's the sample meal gonna be like?
Yeah, it's going to look a lot different. It will look a lot different. It'll, we plan on doing as much as we can as far as, instead of, to be very plain about it, instead of ordering a turkey and cheese sandwich that's already made, we plan on trying to make that ourselves, make it a little bit more fresh. We're gonna do what we can, but you are looking at a lot more prepackaged food. In order, to be able to provide, spaghetti, for example, is that going to accommodate everyone? I don't think that we could provide a meal that you are absolutely required to take home and heat up. So we want to kind of eliminate that. We want it to be easy and ready to eat. As the program develops, would there be opportunities to do pre-ordering for a family? I would think so. If we could, I know right now that the menu developing software that we use is starting to develop a online ordering system. I don't know if it's going to be ready in a month, but I know they are working on that. So there you would have maybe an opportunity for an A or a B lunch, but you're gonna have to, that's gonna have to be a pre-ordering system in order to run a program like that. But not to say that is not a possibility.
So when you say it comes packaged, is it going to a paper bag or what are you looking at?
So we will have a packaging system at GHS where we can, package, let's say 3 items and have it in a sealable container. We can do that. As far as if it's items that we would order in, you've seen, how breakfast in the classroom works, where they're in the coolers and everything's kind of loose, and they, the students come and they pick everything. Obviously, we're not doing that now. So yeah, we will have to bag the items, and then how it will work is you'll get that breakfast and that lunch, so they'll be together.
Can you tell me about your new kitchen and the size of your staff? And will you be serving meals during the weekend?
As of right now, it's just throughout the week. However, that would be something that we could look into as far as if we see a need for, Friday. However, with what you run into too is that if, we're signed up to receive our reimbursement on days when we're scheduled to have school. So whether those flexibilities are going to be allowed for us to serve meals and receive reimbursement on days where we're not scheduled in class, to have class, is yet to be seen. As far as to answer on the GHS kitchen, not to make light of the situation, but it looks absolutely awesome. I was there yesterday, and they had I think they were starting to finish some epoxy work today. But it's going to be really nice when we get back into the buildings. As far as staff-wise, Dr. Asplund, would you like me to comment on that?
We have, as part of our second part of this, presuming that the plan is approved, we have, unfortunately, some reduction in force that we would be asking the board to consider. And part of that would be food service. You to just decide the crew you need at your site.
At the site where we are suggesting that there will be 6 individuals.
How is this gonna work? I'm more concerned about not what the food looks like or what it's packaged in, but how are the kids that are the most vulnerable going to get to the location to get the food? I'm a little confused about that.
Okay, so what we've done is we've basically looked at a big map and looked at the population area, and we're trying to put buses in locations where it's accessible even by walking. Walking distance, and not having to cross a railroad crossing, or not having to cross like Main Street or Grand Avenue or any area there.
Hold on, just
Right.
I heard that, yeah.
Hold on, let me unplug. Okay, go ahead, tell me, go ahead.
Go ahead, Member Sharkey.
Second.
Okay, there is an option, and that's a good question. I'm glad you brought it up. Maybe something that I hadn't specifically thought about, so I'm glad you did bring it up. There are waivers that allow for the specific student does not need to pick up that meal. So during that time, if there's a family member available to pick up the meal, then that could be a possibility. I do understand that in all situations, you can't leave a child at home and go get the meal. So that would be, that's a good question. We'll need to address that.
Well, just to one clarification, so the login for attendance is by 11 o'clock. That doesn't mean you have to be online at 11 o'clock. So you could log in at 7 in the morning, you could log in, and you just have to log in one time. So we're just trying to give students some grace as to when they would log in the first time, that they would absolutely have the flexibility to go get food. They may, obviously, we need to make those arrangements with the synchronous learning part of the day, but those are things that we can absolutely work out as we go with the teacher, by getting the schedules together with teachers.
I have one more just general question. Can I ask? So when
Brad
we're,
has one
Hold on,
question.
Hold on just a second. And I do wanna remind everybody, I know how difficult it is, but this is technically a business meeting. So as much as audience members want to, both here on chat and in the audience, ask us questions, the only way for that to happen is if I suspend the rules and acknowledge folks. And so, let's ask questions up here at the board members, and then we'll see where we're at, okay? Thanks.
Okay, Ron, go ahead.
We're going to have designated times that we will post in those remote areas for where those Wi-Fi buses will be. So people would know that when we say the bus is going to be there, it's going to be there. But those are designated more for upload and download. I mean, they're more than welcome to sit there for 4 hours if they want to, but our presumption was that based on feedback we had before, it was more about uploading and downloading from their mobile site. So, for instance, if we're talking about Colburn Church, perhaps we would say that that bus is going to be out there from 7 in the morning until 11 in the morning. And then that bus would then be available to do other things like food delivery to that part of town or that part of the country. Similarly to the south and the north.
What's the range of those hotspots?
The range of those hotspots, we have reliable range up to about 75 yards.
Member Sharkey, was that all your questions?
Sure. What I would suggest is during registration time that we have a survey that we would allow the families to complete, so we can anticipate the volume. Will you plan on participating in the meal program, and possibly what location we can expect you to be at? You know, we don't expect you to be at that same location every time, but that would give us a little bit of an estimate. I mean, I know the numbers that the United Way have been doing, so I can kind of gauge it off of that a little bit. You know, will there? I am anticipating, you know, a reduction. But I believe by the survey, and then also by kind of going off what the United Way was doing at their certain sites, we can work that out.
Okay, hold on just a second, Member Sharkey, go ahead.
Sure, that's something else where if once I hear back on the flexibilities and on the waivers for extending, extending the availability to do that for reimbursement on those days. I mean, that's obviously our main goal is to be able to provide food, as much as possible as we can. For instance, if, and even if we have a holiday, let's say on a Friday, can we provide them an extra meal on Thursday to get through? By all means, if we can do that, we will.
Any other questions for Mr. Davis from board members? Dr. Esler.
Thank you. I do want to make sure I highlight one other item for families out there that the government has passed the Family First Coronavirus Response Act. And so one of the qualifying events for receiving aid for that is if your child's school is not in session or in person, still in session, not in person, if their child carries coronavirus. There are benefits for families out there, 10 weeks of emergency FMLA, family medical aid, and that's up to $200 a day. So that's one benefit for our families if they qualify for that. And also 80 hours of emergency sick leave for certain employees. Also, want to make sure people are aware of those benefits as we move forward with this plan improvement.
Dr. Esler, will we be able to provide that information? I mean, there's only so many people on this.
Right, we have a flyer we can distribute for Family First information. And matter of fact, probably better if we just add it to the general information so they don't have to use it. Yes, you can absolutely have it.
Now we've reached the point that members have, if they have general thoughts, I believe those are all aspects of the plan that the administration had planned to present to us. So for members who have comments, thoughts, questions, and I ask that we take our time because I have to acknowledge folks on the screen as well as in the room. So give me a heads up that you have a question so that we can make sure everybody's heard. Member Lyons.
I appreciate what we're doing for the meals. I just think we need to be open to make, perhaps may have to be more aggressive as we move forward to have more sites or come to a point that you have to deliver somehow to ensure that students are getting open to some flexibility in the file.
Any other questions or comments? Any of it?
Yes.
Under member health.
So first off, I want to say thank you to all the work that's went into this plan as presented. I know it hasn't been easy, and I know there's been a lot of what ifs, and I can tell there's a lot went into this. I do have some comments that concern me. One of my first one is I want all of you to understand we want our students back in school as quick as we can because we understand that face-to-face is the way we all learn and how we grow. But we also understand safety of our children also. So we all in this board, Member Huntington made a comment earlier, this is a paramount decision night. None of us signed up for. None of us want to be in this situation. Our heart is with the kids, and where some of the decisions tonight are tough. But at the end of the day, we've got the kids at heart, and trust us when we say we want them back in school as quick as we can. We understand that. Some concerning things that I've heard of some families asking neighboring school districts, could their student go there because they are going face to face? That concerns me. We don't want families thinking, that the 205 is not aggressively looking at plans, because we are. I'm asking, and I've voiced my opinion, Dr. Asplund, I want to see a hybrid plan. I want to see a face-to-face plan. As this thing, we've got a 5-week situation to readdress this. I want to see what is our plan. I don't want to keep kicking the can down the road. I want to see, how can we do this and be safe about it. There are inherent risks in everything we do. You get in your automobile to go somewhere, there's a risk. You walk to get your mail, there's a risk. If you fly anywhere, there's a risk. So the COVID is real, but there's risk in life every day. And so, this is one that a lot of us don't know things about, but I want to, I voiced it loudly that, I want to make sure we're in phase 4. We should be opening things. So, that's my opinion on that. When you look at the stats on COVID, there's less than 1% have contracted the COVID. Only 0.04% have died. That's a 99.96% survival rate. 45 and under are less vulnerable and they're the most resilient. So I guess what I'm saying is, my stance is we need them back in school as quick as we can. We got to be safe about it. I understand there's underlying factors with some people. I get that. That's life. And life isn't easy sometimes. So, and the other concern is for the Ks, the kindergarten and first graders. If I were a parent of a kindergartner and he's got to come, he or she, they have to come to school. They don't get to see, I know we're having introductions, but they don't get that feel good, man, I'm getting to go to school. That concerns me. The other thing that concerns me is when we had remote learning this spring. I know someone thought it was a free pass and they didn't engage. My fear is, how do we start a year without any face-to-face and get engagement with some of these children? They're at risk as it is, and some of our family, have to work. How are we going to, Ms. Ritchie gave us a good explanation, but I still am concerned, how are we going to make sure those kiddos get engaged and we don't lose them and our number drops? I feel for our incoming seniors. Darn it, our seniors had to go out on a different note, and our seniors coming in got to come in on a different note. I've told the whole board, I want to do everything we can to help that class, have engagement. One other thing I'll say to Matt on the food, and maybe I'm getting out in the weeds, but how are we going to police? I live in rural, and so what if I'm passing through town and I stop at Silas and I pick something up and then or somebody hops around each spot and gets something? Maybe I'm way out in the weeds, but how do you police something like that? And then we had a survey in June and sent out, and we had a response of a certain percentage want to go back to face-to-face and whatever. I was pretty staunch on that with Dr. Asplund that did we resurvey, but I was assured when the committees met for 2 days last week, a lot of them went in there thinking we need to be back face to face and we need to drive forward. But as all of the regulations, requirements, all of the things to get us back in school are like, whoa. there's a lot of hurdles. So I know a lot of you are saying that all our surrounding districts are going back face to face in some form or another. Yes, they are, but we're all sitting going, how are they going to do that? And will it be successful? So I've rambled on, but I think I've given you my concerns, but I've also looked at being educated, I guess. I will tell you, the past week, I have been on the phone. I've asked a lot of questions. I've been a lot of ears. I've called neighboring school board members at neighboring districts. What are you doing? How? This isn't easy. And I don't know out of all that what I learned, because everybody has a different view. Everybody views this COVID thing totally different. So that's where I'm coming from, but I want to thank, this plan is very well done. I can see some loopholes in it, but there's loopholes in everything. But I think we have a plan to start. I'm gonna hold everybody accountable to this 5-week thing of let's evaluate, let's know where we're at, what's working, not working, and not be afraid to pull an audible in 5 weeks and do what needs to be done. So, thank you.
Thank you, Member Phelps. Any other members have comments? Member Huntington?
Well, I just want to tell Member Phelps that in COVID-19 world, even face-to-face ain't what it used to be. And the one thing I want to impress upon so many people, why can't we go back to face-to-face? Well, the teacher's going to be wearing a mask, and there's going to be a line, and he or she cannot go back there and talk to their students. There are going to be temperatures that are being taken. And of course the question, but one problem with face-to-face is, let's say there is one case of COVID in the building. Are we going to close the building, or are we just going to decontaminate it? It's a very complex situation that we find ourselves in. So yes, face-to-face is not what it used to be. That's all I want to say.
Any other board member comments? Member Sherby, just a second, Member Sherby, so we can make sure that the room, the gallery, and everything hear you. Okay, say something so we can see.
Okay. I'd like to echo many of Member Phelps' comments. I don't think any of us want to be in this situation. Ideally, we want our students back in the classroom as soon as it's possible to be safe for both the students and the staff. But unfortunately, this isn't the time for it right now. There's a lot of liabilities that our district faces if we were to proceed in such a manner. I know the Center for Disease Control has running some guidelines for what we should do before we could go there, and I don't think we're capable of achieving all of these steps. But I do believe that we do need to constantly reevaluate the metrics from the health department and evaluate what we need to do so we can get back there as soon as possible. There's something we need to do. I do have concerns about the e-learning. We had that for a quarter last year and was less than successful. Summer school, I would have liked to have seen some better results. So I'm really hoping that all of the parents and students take this seriously. I know the teachers are, and they're going to do their due diligence to provide an education for the student. But it's really up to the parents and the students to participate in this so they can get as much out of the e-learning as they can. And I believe, again, there's been an awful lot of work going into we're trying to not leave anybody out. There's a lot of people, we have students that are at risk, we have students with disabilities. We want to meet the needs of all of our students in our district. And it's not an easy thing to do during this pandemic, but we're certainly trying to do the best that we can. And our goal is to absolutely get back in the classroom as soon as it's safe for the students and the staff. That's about it.
Thank
Again,
you.
thank you to everybody for the work that they've been to.
Thank you, thank you. Any other comments from board members? Member Rodriguez?
Again, I'd like to say what everybody else said, thank you for all of your hard work that everybody put in those 2 days. It was a long 2 days. I sat in on the elementary committee. The thing going into it, there was a lot of us thinking that we wanted to go back to school, and like Member Phelps said, that once you started going into the details of what needed to be done on a daily basis, what teachers needed to do, what students needed to do, questions, temperatures, masks, that the teachers can't interact with the students, they can't go up to their desk and help. It was very eye-opening to see that. I think a lot of us changed our hearts when we left on Tuesday. It wasn't something that people, you could see it on their faces. Definitely the teachers, they were very sad that they realized it's not gonna be like it used to be. And I think that's what makes them really sad. But they were very encouraging on how are we gonna make this work? And they wanted to make it work. And they solely do wanna be back in the classrooms, but I think that they just know this is the safest thing for them. They don't want to go to a school and be exposed and then come home and expose somebody at their house, or have to be off work for 14 days and come back, and then who knows, have to go back off work again for 14 days. It's just an ending cycle, and you never know when it is going to be okay. I think the community and the parents, bear with us for 5 weeks. I mean, we need to look and see where our data is. Like the Member Phelps said, we can see what other districts do, how their plans plan out going back to school. I don't know, it's a really hard decision to make. It's not easy for anybody. I am also a parent with 2 in the school. It's going to be hard for kids going to new schools that do not know their teachers, so that's why I strongly encouraged the Meet the Teacher Night. I strongly encourage all of the parents to take the Parent University classes, so then you can learn the online platforms. It is very challenging, especially for the older generation that's not very tech savvy. This will help. I think the technology hotline is a very good thing that we will have, because then the parents or the teachers aren't bugged at 7 o'clock at night. Not that they wouldn't answer you, because they totally will, but this will be something that we have tech people, and this is their job. They are there to help you with the platform. So I strongly encourage everybody to use those as we do have them. That's all I have.
Thank you, Member Rodriguez. Any other members want to add any comments? I'm gonna say a few things because I think that the next items on the agenda are gonna be fairly straightforward, unfortunately. Unbelievably, I am at only 5 years seniority at this table, the longest seated member at this table. And I don't know if it's me, but there hasn't been 1 year that I have sat at this table that hasn't had a major decision regarding this district. Coming off of a strike, moving into rifts because of budget crises, state budget crisis, building renovation plans. There are many board members in many other districts that don't see one of those issues during their tenure as a board member. This decision tonight is not any easier than any of those other decisions that I have made previously. And I expressed to members at this table, part of the reason why these decisions are not easy is because we know the people that they affect. We see you, we're friends with you. Some of us may golf together, some of us may run into each other at Hy-Vee or Walmart. You may educate my children. So these decisions are not made lightly. And as members have already stated, the decisions we're making right now, at the forefront of that is the safety of our district. And willing that everybody is following the guidelines set forward. In 5 weeks, we're gonna be sitting here and we're gonna be talking about an integration plan, right? And how do we reintegrate slowly but surely into an in-person learning environment? That is my hope. That is where we wanna be. And hopefully within these 5 weeks that we move through this, we're creating a foundation so that if we find ourselves back in person, and then for some reason we find ourselves back in a situation like last spring where within, a week's time we are having to shut everything back down again, our learning isn't going to be interrupted in the same way that it was this past spring. That we are doing our due diligence as a district to the learning of our students. And I am not tech savvy, so I recognize the challenge that this is gonna present to some of our community members, some of our families. It's time, it is learning new skills, and I recognize that, and it is not lost on me that will create a burden. And unfortunately, some of our hardest hit families in our community are also probably going to be hit in ways in these decisions as well. And again, that's not lost on me as well. And we will be doing, as Member Phelps stated, constant evaluation of what's working, how is it working, what didn't we foresee? Because I'll tell you, the fact that Mr. Davis is already thinking about what we might have to do in the winter, even though this plan is only 5 weeks long, gives me hope that people are actually saying, okay, what happens if, right? Because that's the game that we have been playing. What happens if? And it is extremely hard to create plans when that is the question that you have to ask yourself, what happens if? So I just want to commend all of the people who have put time and effort into doing the research on best practices, into thinking of all of the what ifs so that we could get to a place that we have a cohesive plan for 5 weeks. And I just want to thank the staff as they move forward for being willing to say, this is not the environment that I want to teach in, but I'm going to be here for my students and I'm going to teach. And we're going to have those connections regardless if it's on, Google Classroom or Seesaw. And I know that our teachers are going to be able to do this because we have great teachers in this district. And then we just need to be making sure that we're providing the support necessary. And I would say I wasn't around for some of the earlier conversations when new PD was introduced, but I feel like when it comes to new platforms and things like that, it feels like we're trying to do our due diligence in helping our staff feel supported in learning those things. And so I am thankful for that too. So those are my comments regarding this plan. There are no other comments. You have something, Member Ryan?
I just want to clarify the time frame. That 5 week window we're talking about is 5 weeks of this plan.
Correct.
Not 5 weeks from this date.
Correct, it's 5 weeks of this plan, so essentially, for easy purposes, it's the month of September.
I have a question, I guess didn't ask if you might be wondering. You may have said it, I'm sorry. Teachers, are they going to be in their classrooms? Optional, are we still using the mobile classrooms on the runway? Because I've seen a lot of comments, now that's a waste of money, because we knew this was gonna happen and we ordered those for a whole year to waste our money, but
I'm really glad you asked those questions so we can clarify. So, yes, teachers will be in their classrooms. There will be teachers that are teaching from home because they have different needs, but we have very sensible and clear rules for how people will be in one another. So it really, as far as the students and parents go, it really won't be noticeable. But as for the mobile classrooms, yes, they'll absolutely be. otherwise been in GHS that don't have a room, or we relocated them because they were on the second floor, or they were a first floor that we moved to the second, from a second floor to the house. All those classrooms will be housed, they'll have teachers in them. And those folks will be teaching by and large from those mobile units, and if and when, more of a when, we will be having students in the building. When those students come, they'll be in those rooms, and they'll see it's really nice. So, I mean, yeah, we're all very glad that we got those Google classrooms, because they are going to be.
Any other questions or comments? All right, Allison?
Lyman?
Yes.
Phelps?
Yes.
Rodriguez? Yes. Turpin?
He said yes.
He said yes.
Walters? He said aye. Cervantes?
Aye.
Lyon?
Yes. Next one. Which one?
Can I have to say something real quickly about that? To the folks out there listening, I understand, and I've heard from many people who are upset hearing that we might be going to remote learning. Things like that, how e-learning, I guess we ask for your grace, and I also want to make sure that you understand that while the board voted 7-0, we've been speaking off and on, individually, in groups of two, for the better part of a week and a half, after we've gotten all this other looked at. This plan was not like a rubber stamp where I dropped it on their lap and said, here, it's actually drastically different. This is a result of many, many hours of conversation. I said it at the beginning, and I'll say it again, I sincerely appreciate the teachers and the DEA's willingness to work with us. I mean, it's a bad situation for everybody. Nobody wants to be in this situation. But I also believe that good comes out of everything. And we are going to be better because of this. There are some really great blended learning opportunities that we might be able to use going forward, even after coronavirus is something we're not that worried about. There are going to be things that make us stronger out of this. We are doing a great job with the hand-me belt. And I am so very proud of our staff. I'm so very proud of our students. I'm so very proud of our families. I'm very proud of the board. Everybody stood up for what they believed in. Everybody's had to give a little bit. So trust me when I say this. Member Phelps voting yes was one of the biggest shocks I've received in a while. He took me to task pretty good on this one, and good for him. As did Member Sherby. I mean, we have spent so many hours on this, and it's not over. Our administrative team has worked hours on this, the staff, the parents, the board. I mean, this is not just something we threw out there and said, here, let's do this. This is based on a lot of input. And even though the area districts around us are doing something different, doesn't mean they're right and we're wrong. It doesn't mean we're right and they're wrong. We're doing what's best for the students in our district. And for those parents who are really upset and saying, I'm moving my kid to another district, I would caution you to wait a few weeks. There might be a lot of different things going on. We are doing everything we can to try to meet the needs of everybody we can. And it's a challenge I know we're up to. And we're all gonna make mistakes, and we're gonna grow, and we're gonna improve every time we make those mistakes, because that's what learning is about. And last year's remote learning plan taught us a lot. And we got a lot of feedback from people about what we didn't do so well, and about what we could do better, and what we did well. And so we have taken that input, and we are making a better plan, and we will do a better job this year. And Ms. Springer has done a fantastic job of reaching out to countless staff members and doing her research on how to put our best foot forward in terms of staff development. And I feel really great about that. So our staff at this, I hate to do this to you, Mrs. Springer, but off the top of your head, do you remember how many staff volunteered to come in on time they didn't have to come in to get professional development?
212 to be exact, and then additional measures.
Yeah, so 212 of our staff are coming in the month of August when they don't have to be here. to get training. So, I mean, there is a tremendous amount of buy-in from the District 205 family here to try to do the best we can. So, I cannot I can't express enough how proud I am of our staff and our administrators. They've risen to the occasion, and we're gonna continue to do it. And we need to be called to the carpet when we screw up, and believe me, we have been. But that's what we're here for, and we're gonna do better, and we've done better. And I really believe this is the right thing to do. We're taking a measured approach, and we're gonna see how facts have changed at the end of September, and we're gonna be able to come back here and have a really intelligent discussion about how to move forward in October. And quite honestly, folks, we might say, we're gonna keep on keeping on. We could say, we're bringing half the students back. We don't know. But we're at least taking a little bit of time to take a breath and go, okay, we think we know what we're doing, we're gonna enact a plan, and then we're gonna revisit it. Because that's what you should do. When faced with different facts, I reserve the right to change my mind. So that's how we're gonna approach this. That as facts present themselves, we will make a new plan. And I'm really appreciative of the board's patience on this, because you're doing this with no pay at all, and having to get kicked around, and that's unfortunate, because these 7 people have put in a lot of time, believe me. And so for folks out there that are upset, all I ask is that you give everybody grace, because that's all we're doing.
Thank you, Dr. Esplin. Okay, so moving to our next item on our agenda. Do I have a motion to consider approval of the resolution reference the honorable dismissal of certain GEA educational support personnel during the COVID-19 pandemic with exhibits?
So moved.
Member Hunnigan moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Member Rodriguez. Is there any discussion on this before we vote? Yeah.
Yeah, I will clarify that. So this motion is asking for honorable dismissal, which is a reduction in force of our paraprofessionals, our ISSP coordinators. So I just turn that list up there. It was the GEA people, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so our ISSP coordinators are paraprofessionals. That does not mean that we are unemploying all of those folks. What that means is we have a new reality. And so we are going to reset the clock and try to figure out how we're going to recall many of these people as soon as maybe even tomorrow. So I need people to understand that this isn't just eliminating all these jobs. This is us trying to figure out how to best staff the building now that we know what the plan was. So we're going to in earnest start to recall some of these folks, but not to get too far in the weeds for people listening out there, but there are very strict ways you have to recall people, and it's all by seniority. And so in order to be able to do that, we may be asking people to go into positions they haven't typically been in. And so the best way to do this, in our opinion, is to issue a reduction in force of the entire classification of paraprofessionals, which Arnold's is here at 108 people. That doesn't mean we're letting go of 108 people. That means we're going to immediately have a meeting tomorrow morning to talk about how we're going to call back many of these people. And as more students come back, we will be calling back more people. So as facts change, once again, our staffing will change. So this just gives us an opportunity to be flexible and to meet the needs of the kids as we change our plan going forward.
So I will say, I think Dr. Russ will say I took you to task on this one. And I challenged, and we looked at everything that we're gonna need. And I can assure everybody listening and here that I got confidence in how this will play. Was not an easy conversation, it never is. But I have full confidence that we'll have, as facts, figures come through, we'll have everybody back and have full staff. Once again, I didn't sign up for this, but COVID-19 said, hold on and watch this. And so we're being nimble, we're being flexible, but we also have a business to run. And we also have to be cognizant to our taxpayers, to all of you sitting here, all parents and everything. So, trust us that we're doing due diligence, so.
Get on my next one. Thank you, Member Phelps. Member Walters, did you have some thoughts?
As a possibility since the beginning of June, and fortunately with a memorandum of understanding with the GEA, we have been able to postpone it until we've gotten enough information to make as best an informed decision as possible, that none of us, I would say sitting up there, but I'm not sitting up there right now. We don't take it lightly. It's a difficult decision and it impacts a lot of people. But there is also a huge financial implication that if we don't make this decision by August 1, those people will stay on payroll, continue when we might not have a use for their skill set immediately. But hopefully, we will be able to, in potentially as little as 5 weeks, recall many, if not all of them, back into full employment.
Thank you, Member Walters. Any other comments from board members?
I just have one question again, Dr. Asplin. What is the number, the exact number right now in regard to the reduction in force? How many paraprofessionals are we talking about?
108. And then also 2 ISSP coordinators, which that's in school suspension. Last year, I don't know what that is.
Any other questions? Allison?
Phelps?
Abstain.
Rodriguez?
Aye.
Sharpie? Did you say no?
He said no.
Walters? Sorrentos?
Aye.
Flanagan?
Aye.
Lyon?
Yes.
Next, do I have a motion to consider approval of a resolution reference the honorable dismissal of certain non-GEA educational support personnel during the COVID-19 pandemic with exhibits?
So moved.
I second.
Thank you, Member Hunt. Dr. Asplin, did you want to give a preference for this?
Sure. So that specifically is talking about job coaches, other exempt like security personnel, and truancy, and some of our custodial staff, not all of it, a very large amount of our food service staff, admittedly, for right now, is beef canned food, obviously for first of those staff. So we're talking about, I don't have the numbers exactly in front of me, but let's see, I can do this very fast. Approximately 70 people.
Questions or comments from board members? Allison?
Rodriguez?
Aye.
Sharpie?
Aye.
Walters?
Aye.
Sorrentos?
Aye.
Flanagan?
Aye.
Lyon?
Yes.
Phelps?
Aye.
And next, do I have a motion to consider approval of resolution reference decision to discontinue certain extra duties / stipend assignments and duties during the COVID-19 pandemic with exhibits?
So moved.
Second.
So, anybody listening at home, you may have just heard that we cut all extracurriculars. That's not what's technically really happening here. So what we're doing is, we're asking the board to consider removal of all differentials. That doesn't mean we plan to cut all differentials on coaching stipends, things like that, sponsors, plays, band, things like that. What we're talking about is, we all acknowledge we're in a very new normal. So we're asking the board to basically reset it to zero, and then we're gonna have conversations with each of those folks through their supervisor, whether that be their principal, the athletic director, the fine arts coordinator, or how we can justify any of those stipends going back forward. So, if the IHSA makes a decision that we aren't going to have some sports but others, that could impact it, or we could decide maybe we wanna earn the money a different way. So we're not just confining this to, if there's no sport, there's no stipend. If there is a sport, there is a stipend. If there's no play, there's no stipend. If there is a play, it's not that simplistic. So we know that students are tied to school in many ways other than their classroom. So we are just going to be asking our staff to think outside the box, and think of ways that we can do creatively, so that we can justify these stipends going forward. So we're just trying to respond to the new normal, and this is the procedural way we have.
Any questions or comments from board members?
So someone who has a differential currently will set up an appointment with their supervisor for that responsibility.
That's correct.
And they would set up some agreement on what it would look like in this situation.
So it would be upon their supervisor would need to agree to a plan. And quite honestly, those can vary greatly. So if you're somebody that, we'll get there's Russ over there, so Russ does our plays and our musical. So one's in the fall, one's in the spring. Maybe we drag our feet and wait for the spring, and maybe, so I mean, we can make different decisions based on, if Craig Hillier wants to worry about track in March rather than January rather than now. I mean, those types of things we can take time on. But if you're somebody who's, marching band or junior high football or, things like that that are immediate, we're going to have quicker discussions for those folks to start brainstorming how they would like to potentially run that money if there is no activity.
So we may very well be hiring somebody back at the next meeting.
Very well, absolutely. And it may take longer because there's a lot of discussion that take place.
Is there going to be a football schedule in the fall?
There is a football schedule. Whether we actually play it is still very much up in the air. Now, this is me guessing. That's all this is. I'm very much doubtful that that's going to happen based on what I'm hearing. But that doesn't mean it still couldn't happen.
Member Phelps?
So everybody out there listening, this was another one that I challenged very hard. Because in my comments earlier about a senior coming in and to have to hear this and say, oh no. So I challenged it really hard. And once we got an explanation of, what I'm challenging all the listening and the administration and teachers, think out of the box. And we could turn this into a fun year of some things we've never done or we've never thought of or whatever. Please do that for me. Because all of our students, especially our seniors, we could really make this fun for them. And because I challenged that one, I challenged it hard. But now I have a comfort level that, we're not saying no. What we're saying is let's think out of the box and let's turn this thing into something special.
Any other comments? Yes, hold on just a second, Member Sharpie. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, we already have some coaches that are doing practices and conditioning as per IHSA guidelines. How does this impact them? Do they stop immediately until we take further action, or?
That's a great question, and it's actually, if I had more time today, I would have asked Luke Feeney that very question, because Mr. Matthews brought that up to me today. So I would say for tomorrow, it would be wise to not have any activity. But we will seek further legal advice on that very quickly to see what we would need to do for those particular activities.
Oh, Luke's tapping in.
Oh,
Hold on.
And I'll talk to you tomorrow.
thank you, thank you.
And thank you, Courtney.
I see this little thing light up, I was like, oh, Luke's on there.
Just for the record, it takes a lot of people to run one of these meetings when you've got to pay attention to what's in the room and what's online. So member reviews, thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? Okay, screen. Okay. Allison?
Shirky?
Aye.
Walters? Tomatis?
Aye.
Flanagan?
Aye.
Lyon?
Yes.
Phelps?
Aye.
Rodriguez?
Aye. Okay. That brings us to the end of a very painful meeting. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed?
Aye.
You said that tomorrow.